If you place 50,000 horny people on an island that are disease-free, will they still develop HIV/AIDS or an STD? Are there any other mammals on the island? How long is the time scale? It probably won't happen in 1 or 2 generations, but in a few hundred years, maybe some kind of STD would form. Inevitably a virus will mutate, but it's unlikely to occur during a single generation. No, assuming no pathogen is introduced from outside and an evolutionary timescale is not a factor. Should remain STD-free, though sure, technically some blood-borne diseases can vector through other species. I'd say a group on a mission to Mars, that is DDF, and at least temporarily sterilized, are totally free to orgy. That answer your ask? Are there monkeys on the island? No, diseases don't come out of nowhere. You have to bring the disease to a population to get the diseases in that population. This is the reason why diseases wiped out most of the Native American population before the Europeans did themselves. There was no smallpox in the Americas, and then the Europeans showed up and brought it with them. As long as they aren't so horny they start fucking the wildlife and contracting some shit, there shouldn't be a risk of STD. It depends on how you define STD. Many infectious diseases that we don't consider STDs can be spread through sexual contact, and the close respiratory and physical contact associated with sex. If you get intestinal parasites while eating ass or transfer a cold sore onto someone's genitals, did you get an STD? If you go from anal to oral sex and acquire Hep A? If you finger someone's ass and then rub your eyes and get pink eye? Rub ringworm onto each other's crotches? HPV finds a way. Yeah, probably, at some point they'll transmit fecal matter or maybe some other colonized bacteria to the other people just by accident. It won't be like syphilis or gonorrhea, but someone will probably get a UTI or cystitis at some point. So STI probably. It would depend heavily on the genetic diversity of the other animals on the island and how genetically similar they are to humans. If the island was filled with bats and small rodents, it would be likelier that a novel disease would mutate in a way that allowed it to cross over to humans. The size and isolation level of the island would also be important, as a small, isolated island would likelier have its own unique evolutionary history compared to a larger island close to land where animals can cross over between the two. Still, it might take thousands of years for it to happen. In the pre-colonial Americas, there were plenty of diseases that never developed like they did across Africa, Europe, Asia, to the point where indigenous peoples have little to no adaptation to new diseases like smallpox that were introduced by early Europeans. However, they did have novel diseases of their own like syphilis, so it's likely that new diseases would eventually mutate and evolve in any closed population. What do you mean by healthy? Even if we aren't carrying STDs, presumably we'd have some viruses. We need them to have a healthy microbiome. And assuming people are having sex, eventually one of the viruses would mutate into an STD to fill the empty niche. I think the first few sexually transmitted diseases would be pretty unlikely to resemble AIDS. The first known case was in 1959, when it jumped from chimpanzees, so it's not like humans can't exist for a long time without AIDS. But presumably, sheer chance would eventually produce something similar if people survived long enough. No, assuming no outside influence. Is the island uninhabited when they arrive? If there's no disease in the island, including animals and plants, and 100 healthy people with no disease go there to live, their kids will end up developing immunodeficiency, which is similar to AIDS. This doesn't mean they'll get AIDS, it's just the lack of illnesses, and it's not genetic. Not in their lifetime. It will take several hundred generations before an STD evolves, assuming only with innocent sex. And HIV/AIDS, no. This disease evolved from other primates. If your human colony doesn't have it, and there are no primate species nearby who have it, then it won't evolve again. Yes, they would. You throwing a party? Let me get an invite. Are the animals on this island also STD-free? Depends. Are there also animals on the island? You know, some stupid FK will do it. I love that you felt you had to specify horny. As if you put 50,000 pensive people on fuck island they wouldn't eventually get down to business, lol. If there are monkeys on the island, some horny dude is gonna stick something where it shouldn't and well get AIDS all over again. That's how it started. Where do I sign up? Not any of the STDs that currently exist. If you are asking this wondering if your partner cheated because he showed up with STD, then yes, he did. You can't get STD out of the blue without having contact with someone contaminated. No, but they could end up on VH1. I pretty frequently get a yeast infection if my girlfriend is having one. I suspect some species of yeast are far more aggressive than others and probably would spread around the island. Also, oral herpes isn't usually checked for in STD tests, and 23% of the population already have it. That would probably spread around. A lot of diseases come from animals closely interacting with humans, and those animal diseases crossing over to humans. Plague comes from fleas, smallpox comes from cattle, AIDS is thought to come from chimps. So, it would take a long while for any disease to mutate enough to infect humans. Even longer if these people don't come into close contact with animals. An STD may never form, however. Think about how many STDs there are in the world versus respiratory diseases.